I can't believe I'm about to say this, but the 90s WWF Attitude Era is overrated, people. I had I had to really like sit back and just go back and watch some of the things that were happening during the Attitude Era. And if you look at, see, I was young. I was a kid during the 90s, right? During the Attitude Era, I was a kid. But as an adult now, looking at going back, looking at the Attitude Era and what transpired and how it was ran, I can honestly say Vince McMahon did what he did and ran the WWF during the Attitude Era the way he did because it was a Monday Night War with WCW. Notice, he didn't rely on wrestling and wrestling matches for him to succeed or the WWF to succeed. Everything was gimmicky. Every match almost was gimmicky. The owner of the company literally was involved in almost everything, from the promos to the main event to the star wrestlers. Even his kids had factions. His son, the owner of the company's son, had a faction called the Main Street Posse. And his son was literally getting main event level matches with some of the biggest stars in the industry. Almost every main event had somebody interfere in it. It was rare that you seen a main event match happen in WWF during the Attitude Era that ended just with a clean finish or just between the two wrestlers. There was always some type of interference from an outside force. The mid-level matches, the mid-tier matches, for the most part, were decent sometimes. The best matches were the tag team matches. Listen, I'm going to say this, right? In the 2000s, in the early 2000s, in 99, 2000, 2001, even 2002, none of those main event matches were really that good if they didn't involve Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, or Kurt Angle. And even Kurt Angle was put into some of the most idiotic, gimmicky matches. Remember, Kurt Angle, the whole thing with him being in love with Stephanie McMahon, the owner of the company's daughter and one of his top-rated wrestlers' wife. I mean, think about this, people. They had Mark Henry literally acting like he was in love with Mae Young, a lady that was in her like 90s or 80s, and pretended to have a baby by her, and it was a hand. This was all, listen, the promos literally ran sometimes 20 minutes long. Sometimes the promos ran 20 minutes long on WWF programming to open the show, to end the show. The promos were like 20 minutes long from the top wrestlers. And the matches were like 10 minutes max. And 9 times out of 10, the match was getting interfered in. There was going to be an interference in the match. I mean, go back and look at WWF during the Attitude Era, or just from, I want to say from 98 to 2001. Everything was promo based. If it wasn't a 10-minute, 20-minute promo, it was some type of weird gimmicky stuff going on. And if it wasn't some weird gimmicky stuff going on, you know what's crazy? The best matches I see or I have from that time frame in WWF is Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho's rivalry, Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle's rivalry, The tag team matches, which were all gimmick matches, it was either a ladder match, a table match, a table, ladders, and chairs match, a no disqualification match. Most of those matches were gimmicky. But all of the best matches from that era, from 98 to 2001, they were all even the matches even the matches where it was like X-Pac versus Jeff Jarrett or something, or if you think you can't go look at really, it's not really a clean match during that era. From 98 to 2001, it's not a lot of clean matches in that era that doesn't involve Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, or Chris Benoit. When I say clean matches, I mean from beginning to end, it's just pure wrestling and you getting a winner. Everything had to be gimmicky or some type of interference, or the promos where the guys were insulting each other. Like if you look at The Rock and Stone Cold from, I want to say 99, if you look at The Rock and Stone Cold from 99 to 2001, from 99 to 2001, if you look at The Rock and Stone Cold, every single one of their promos, neither of them put on promos where you can't find a promo from 99 to 2001 where The Rock or Stone Cold faced somebody and they gave them credit for their abilities in the ring, or for how good they were, or for how much of a opponent they were. Like you can't find anywhere from 99 to 2001 where The Rock and Stone Cold gives credit to their opponent in meaning how dangerous they are. Everything was a burial to their opponent. When Stone Cold and The Rock faced Chris Jericho, when they faced Chris Benoit, when they faced Triple H, when they faced Mankind or Dude Love, when they faced anybody, they never put anybody over in their promos. They rarely put them over in their matches. They might have been able to get a little bit of offense, or leading up to in the programs with these wrestlers, leading up to the matches, only how they were able to get the upper hand on them if they were interfered in one of their matches that they was having. And they had Shane McMahon or Vince with them or some outside interference. They were never able to look just completely good on their own versus The Rock or Stone Cold. Not on the mic, not in the ring, not in promos, anything. They never made anybody else look good. It was always a burial of everybody else. And that's how they were built their whole career. What would it have hurt it for The Rock or Stone Cold to say to a wrestler who wasn't on that wasn't of their stature, I know you a threat, but this. No, everything was, I'm going to kick your monkey egg, turn it sideways, or give me a beer, I'm going to do this, that, a stunner, come out. They used to literally have Stone Cold go out in other mid-tier wrestlers matches like Val Venus and other people who were good wrestlers and just stun all of them because he was mad, and just to get a pop from the crowd, Stone Cold would literally go out and interfere in people's matches and stun all of them and make them look completely useless and weak and then leave out. This is how they build those guys. But this is also why they had no choice but to turn to Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, and Chris Benoit. Because if you think about Stone Cold's run, it didn't last long. He got hot in 97. In 98, he stayed hot. But then, if you look at his run only lasted till 01. In 02, Stone Cold was subpar. In 03, he tried to make a comeback. That didn't work. From 99 to 01 was his peak. Because it was the way he was built. The way they built him was just unstoppable, this burying machine. He buried everybody. You know, I used to give Triple H slack like, man, Triple H bury everybody. But if you look who he learned from. He learned from The Rock and Stone Cold because they was always burying him. So he said, I might as well do it to everybody else. But only he didn't have the charisma to keep everybody buried below him. And if you look at The Rock, his reign, he started in 90, it started in 97 building, and then 98, 99, 2000, he went to Hollywood. But if you look at it, if you look at The Rock, he could have did more for other wrestlers, but he didn't. During that time in 99, now you can say, well, he was going up against Stone Cold, who was burying everybody. But in 2000, in 2001, 2002, okay, he put over Brock Lesnar, but he was going to Hollywood. In 2000 and 2001, he fought Chris Jericho. He was still dealing with Hollywood when he lost his belt to Jericho. Him and Stone Cold lost their belts to Jericho that night. But they had to do that because Stone Cold and The Rock was flaming out in the sense of popularity. Chris Jericho popularity was at an all-time high. They killed his popularity when he first came in, but the fans got right back behind him. So it was nothing that they could do to stop him. They had to put the belts on him. But The Rock could have put over Chris Benoit, but he didn't. You know, he could have put over Kurt Angle, but he didn't. All his fights with Kurt Angle, it was up and down. Like Kurt Angle beat him, but even then, it wasn't clean. You know, so listen, it was a lot. The way The Rock, and I don't want to say The Rock didn't do anything for the business or Stone Cold didn't do anything for business. That's not true at all. Because they if it wasn't for them, the business wouldn't be where it is. But what I'm saying is, had they been booked better, had they been booked, or the people they were going against been booked to help them, you know, had they had the mentality of, hey, I'm gonna help them while I'm clearly gonna go over, but I'm gonna make them look good. They really didn't do that. And if you think about it, Vince McMahon didn't build anybody that way. Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit was just happenstance. Like, they were just that good where it's like, okay, you have to put the belt on somebody else. You can't keep putting the belt on Shawn Michaels and Triple H. You got to put it on somebody else. Like Randy Orton. Think about it. Randy Orton has had the title. How many times? How many times has he been in the title picture? How many people have been better than Randy Orton? It's just a thing where it's like, okay, this is our guy and we're going to push him to the moon. But the Attitude Era, it was no wrestling. It was no real wrestling going on in the Attitude Era. If it didn't involve Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, and Eddie Guerrero, it wasn't or Kurt Angle. It wasn't no legit real wrestling going on. It was squash matches. It was matches with interference. It was matches with the owner of the company or his kids. And it was 20-minute, 25-minute promos, burials. You know what I mean? Just straight out burial matches. You know, it was that time. If you look at that time during WWF, it's not too many matches, like I said, that doesn't involve Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, or Kurt Angle. It's not too many matches from 99 to 2001 that you can take and present to people and say, here, watch these wrestling matches. This is pure wrestling. It's not too many matches you can take that doesn't involve them four people from that era of wrestling that you can show people and say this is what wrestling is all about. Because everybody else was heavily involved in promos. Everybody else was heavily involved in shticks and making people look bad and just buffoonery. Complete buffoonery. And it's crazy. Like, I go back and I didn't watch WCW growing up. My household was WWF to the bone. It wasn't no WCW. Only time I watched WCW is when I went over to my uncle and my cousin's house, and they were major WCW fans, and they would order pay-per-views, but every time they ordered a pay-per-view, they had DirecTV, so if it was raining or the wind was blowing too hard, it'd knock out the pay-per-view. So we rarely got to see it. But when I got older, I discovered, you know, like I said, well, Rey Mysterio, he came into WWF, but I discovered where he came from. He came from WCW. I discovered where Eddie Guerrero came from, WCW. Chris Jericho came from. Chris Benoit came from. Dean Malenko came from. The cruiserweight division and the mid-card division in WCW was pure wrestling. You got nothing but pure wrestling from them. WWF didn't have that. If it wasn't involving those 4 guys that came from WCW that was putting on pure matches, just like the cruiserweights with the luchadors and some of the mid-tier guys, if it wasn't for those matches, those were pure wrestling matches. WWF, WWE didn't put those matches on unless those 4 guys were involved. And then in 02, 03, 04, then you had Edge. Then you had Edge. Then you had Rey Mysterio. And then like I said, Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero. All these guys were mid-tier. They were used as mid-tier wrestlers, but they were putting on the best matches. They were putting on the best matches. Then when they got pushed into the main event, then that's when Edge is with Lita. Edge is with Vicky Guerrero. Chris Benoit is fighting he has the World Heavyweight title, but they insert a guy that's supposed to be special ed and Eugene into the mix. Eddie Guerrero, he got the whole lying, cheating, stealing gimmick. He had it, but now they involving he don't have the people behind. He don't have the Chavo Guerreros behind him or the people to the stable behind him. It's just him by himself. But then that don't last long. Then you get Kurt Angle. You doing the idiotic stuff with him. It took him going to TNA to be able to put on pure wrestling matches with zero interference. He was putting on pure wrestling matches in TNA. He was only really able to do that in the mid card in the WWF. He went to TN in WWE. He went to TN, or unless it was involving Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, or Chris Jericho. He went to TNA and was putting on rare, pure wrestling matches. Pure wrestling matches. And it's just, like I said, it's crazy to me, but I just firmly believe that the Attitude Era was nothing but promos, gimmicky matches. When it came to mic work, just burying other wrestlers, burying mid-card wrestlers. It was no real true wrestling going on during that time. At the main event level, it wasn't. So, and like I said, you go back and watch it. You pull up a Rock promo or a Stone Cold promo you go pull up a promo right now on YouTube, and I guarantee you it's going to be like 15, 20 minutes long of people just talking, just burying each other. And then when they finally get the fight later on in the show, it's interference from like 3 or 4 people. You got the owner of the company, you got his kids, you got everybody getting involved in the mix. It was just a SHIT show during that era of wrestling, which is crazy. Because when Vince McMahon when he wasn't involved, from in 97, 96, 95, when he wasn't involved, 94, when he wasn't involved and you didn't know who he was really, you just, like I said, I was a kid during this time, but going back, watching those matches during that time, most of those matches were just pure matches. Shawn Michaels, when he was in the main event, pure matches. Bret Hart, when he was in the main event, pure matches. It was matches that were starting and finishing with little amounts of interference. It was just true, real wrestling matches going on. But then that Attitude Era came and it changed all that at the main event level. So I just want to know what y'all think. I think the WWF, WWE Attitude Era was just completely overrated. It wasn't no real true wrestling going on at the main event level. Unless it involved Eddie Guerrero, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, or Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, or Chris Jericho.